What are we doing, games industry? What are we actually doing? So YouTube doesn't like it when I use no words in the first couple seconds of video, so I'm just gonna ramble for like a couple seconds so that I can say what I actually want to say, which are the words, what the actual fuck, Microsoft. Many of you have likely already heard that Microsoft has shuttered a number of ZeniMax/Bethesda studios. The one that really hits hard is Tango Gameworks, who you will best know as the developers of not only Hi-Fi Rush, one of the best games of that year, but also the likes of The Evil Within and Ghostwire Tokyo. This one didn't sell gangbusters, but a lot of people appreciated the creativity behind this game. This is a studio that was on the rise. You can tell they're very talented. They knocked it out of the park with Hi-Fi Rush, gave Xbox some of the best press they've received in a while. And what does Microsoft do?
How about I give you the finger?
Now, the original founder of the studio, Shinji Mikami, did leave, but obviously it's still his baby, and so when he heard about this, he tweeted, "Tango closed, sad." Plenty of people are baffled by this particular decision. You've got social media influencers like Iron Pineapple straight up in disbelief, and how bleak it is that after creating a masterpiece like Hi-Fi Rush, that's still not enough to keep your studio afloat. Now, Tango Gameworks' announcement does say that Hi-Fi Rush, along with Tango's previous titles, will remain available and playable everywhere they are today. Microsoft will reap the benefits of that, while the developers who made these games possible get the boot and get completely screwed over. And then another major studio that was affected is none other than Arcane Studios, more specifically Arcane Austin, who posted the following message. Today it was announced that Arcane Austin will close and development will not continue on Redfall. Now, that bit is not surprising. I never thought that Redfall had a chance to recover, but to shutter the studio completely, when we're talking about a studio that made renowned games like Prey, this one also hurts, especially because it was the publisher ZeniMax who essentially pushed Arcane into making a live service instead of what they're best known for, which is single-player, immersive sim-style experiences. This right here is an article from June 1st, 2023, whose headline reads, "Some Arcane staff reportedly hoped Microsoft might cancel Redfall, reboot it as a single-player game. Instead, they moved forward with the live service version of Redfall, and once again, we have a story involving a studio that is better known for single-player experiences forced into a live service development environment that didn't work out particularly well." And who's paying for this? Not the decision makers behind this, but the developers who were just following orders, who were just following the captain's commands. These are two studios who can very clearly output very creative and high-quality games, who had a lot of potential to be nurtured so that one day they could make a knock out of the park hit. But Microsoft, in their corporate short-sightedness, decided that upcoming financial quotas and short-term thinking are more important than nurturing the potential of these studios. With Redfall in particular, there's also the issue of promised DLC that people paid money for. There's an update on that front in this statement that Redfall's official Twitter page released that reads, "Redfall players who purchase the Hero Pass as part of the Premium Bite Back Edition or the Premium Bite Back Upgrade will be eligible to receive the value of the upgrade." They have yet to detail exactly what kind of restitution they'll offer to purchasers of these packages. That'll be forthcoming. Employees of these studios were informed via an email to staff sent by Matt Booty, which featured the following text that you can read for yourself. But some of the highlights include, "These changes are grounded in prioritizing high-impact titles and further investing in Bethesda's portfolio of blockbuster games and beloved worlds, which you have nurtured over many decades." They're calling it changes instead of what it is, which is the desecration of some beloved studios. He continues, "To double down on these franchises and invest to build new ones requires us to look across the business to identify the opportunities that are best positioned for success. This reprioritization of titles and resources means a few teams will be realigned to others and that some of our colleagues will be leaving us. Just the most corporate speak way of framing this awful situation. Matt Booty then details the 4 studios that are being shut down: Arcane Austin, Alpha Dog Studios, Tango Gameworks, and Roundhouse Games. Now, the insult to injury is that Matt Booty couldn't even bother to get some of the studios' names right. Alpha Dog Studios is not actually Alpha Dog Studios, it's Alpha Dog Games, and Roundhouse Games is actually Roundhouse Studios. I mean, the lack of care there is palpable. And then Matt Booty concludes with more corporate speak, saying we're making these tough decisions to create capacity to increase investment in other parts of our portfolio and focus on our priority games. When are the people who are actually responsible for the series of events that leads to these so-called tough decisions ever going to face the consequences? When a game studio makes you a game like this, with this kind of critical acclaim and with sales that are pretty good, maybe not, Call of Duty level, but, pretty good and celebrated, and you still somehow find it justifiable to shut down the studio, there's a freaking problem. Now, while we're on the topic of high-quality games that deserve attention, I'd like to give a shout-out to the sponsor of today's video, V Rising, a unique gothic horror, vampire-themed action survival RPG game. The game's been in early access for some time, but its final release has finally arrived, and having played it these past few days, I've got to say, I'm hooked. It's got a vast dark fantasy open world to explore, enemies and monsters to fight, boss battles to overcome, powers to attain, resources to manage, tools, weapons, armor, structures, and technologies to craft and progress, and more, with a constant tension and threat of the sunlight's deathly touch looming. It's a really cool setup that effectively captures the essence of being a vampire who has to rebuild their kingdom from scratch. And for people who love to get creative, the game's expansive and versatile building system will allow you to customize and design your vampire's castles to your heart's content. And all of this can be done either solo or with friends via co-op multiplayer. Also super cool is this Castlevania collab that offers Castlevania-themed cosmetics as well as the ability to face off against the one and only Simon Belmont. If surviving, thriving, and reigning supreme as a vampire and daring to challenge Dracula's throne sounds like is up your alley, you can use my link in the description box and comment section below to play V Rising right now on PC with a PS5 version just around the corner. You'll also find 3 Steam codes for the game that I'm giving away for those who manage to snag them first. Now back to the news at hand. I'd like to proceed by highlighting the lies that Microsoft has told surrounding their alleged desire to continue supporting these studios, continue nurturing them. It was only last year that Microsoft full-on said that they're not planning to shut Redfall Studio Arcane Austin despite that live service's failure, and they admitted that they should have done a better job supporting the Bethesda studio and that they would do so in the future. That aged like milk on a hot summer day. Here we have Ethan Gatch highlighting what Matt Booty said last June. Arcane Austin staying open is the plan right now. They're hard at work on updates and continued content for Redfall. And then Pete Hines months later in September said, we don't quit or abandon stuff just because it didn't start right. Now, Pete Hines has since retired from Bethesda, so this was not under his control. But you look back at some of the statements that the Microsoft and Xbox team have put out there, and it is laughable, especially this statement right here from none other than VP of Xbox Games Marketing, Aaron Greenberg, who made it a point to highlight on Twitter that, quote, Hi-Fi Rush was a breakout hit for us and our players in all key measurements and expectations. We couldn't be happier with what the team at Tango Gameworks delivered with this surprise release. Could have fooled me with how events have transpired recently. Next up, here we have a direct quote from none other than Xbox head Phil Spencer, who after the acquisition of Xbox and Bethesda went through, he said, I'm ready to go to Tokyo. Yeah, I mean, go see Tango, a studio that I have such respect for, the history of the creations there. I've talked for a long time about our desire to have more of a first-party presence in Japan. This is a great step there, he said. So, I mean, just thinking about the map of where these teams are, and they just talk about all the games they're working on, but I can't wait to spend more time with the Tango team and get to know them. That's another aspect that's baffling about the decision to shut down Tango. They are a Japanese studio, and Xbox has been trying to make more headway in the Japanese market. They have completely butchered that prospect by taking down their only Japanese first-party studio. Like, what's the freaking strategy here? How does this serve their long-term goals? There are plenty of headlines like these that nowhere indicated that Microsoft had plans to shutter these studios. Headlines like Hi-Fi Rush was a major success according to Xbox, and Phil Spencer is a huge supporter of Arcane despite Redfall reception. Here's Ryan McCaffrey from IGN highlighting a quote from Phil Spencer from back in May 4th, 2023 that reads, "One thing I won't do is push against creative aspirations of our teams. When a team like Rare wants to do Sea of Thieves, when a team like Obsidian wants to do Grounded, when Tango wants to do Hi-Fi, when everyone thought they were probably doing The Evil Within 3, I want to give the teams the creative platform to go and push their ability to push their aspirations." Basically saying that we're not trying to chase trends here. We just want to let the developers cook and have fun making the games that they want to make and maximize their potential that way. None of that panned out with Tango Gameworks and with Arcane Austin. And then you got people highlighting clips like this from Xbox that express similar sentiments about lessons learned from the past and how they want to foster creativity of the developers that they've acquired for the future and keep them around long term. And now it all just sounds ridiculous under the present circumstances. So here's that clip.
We acquired Lionhead in 2006, shut it down in 2016. A couple years later, we reflected back on that experience. What did we learn? How do we not repeat our same mistakes?
You acquire a studio for what they're great at now, and your job is to help them accelerate how they do what they do, not them accelerate what you do.
As this Twitter user correctly points out, unfortunately, you learned absolutely nothing, Xbox. This is just history repeating itself. Now, I don't know how much of a role Phil Spencer specifically had to play in these decisions, because Xbox ultimately answers to Microsoft, whose CEO is Satya Nadella, and I don't know if it was Microsoft's higher-ups mandate to eliminate these studios. Whatever the case, Phil Spencer is the face of Xbox, and this is just an awful look for him. And right now, tons of people, and I think understandably, are questioning Phil Spencer's leadership as head of Xbox. And while Phil Spencer seems like a nice guy, he doesn't seem like a mustache-twirling villain of an executive, he said a lot of things that just are not panning out, and there comes a point where it just becomes irresponsible and it becomes impossible to trust anything you say moving forward. When there's so many broken promises about how they're going to treat the companies and studios and developers and projects that they've acquired, you know, it's like every studio now feels like it's at risk, especially when a successful, critically acclaimed Game of the Year nominee, and for some people, actually the winner of Game of the Year title, Hi-Fi Rush, can't even be the justification to keep a studio around, which is why people are putting out tweets like how Ninja Theory, Obsidian, Double Fine, id, and Machine Games all seem unsafe now, because even if they make high-quality games like Hi-Fi Rush, they might be in danger of being shuttered if Hi-Fi Rush is anything to go by. We've got games journalists like Imran Khan saying things like, hey, imagine being Ninja Theory today. They could drop the best game of the year with Hellblade 2 this month and still close down if someone at Microsoft moves their arbitrary, well, it's not Call of Duty numbers goalpost. Here's Dave Oshry, the head of New Blood, who spoke out against this, saying, doesn't matter if you make a game that's a bestseller, award winner, or a cult classic, you're getting shut down by corporate sooner or later, pal. Or somebody else put it, if Hi-Fi Rush isn't enough to keep a studio alive, nothing is. That's basically the message that Microsoft is sending not only to the public, but to the developers who are likely now fearing for their livelihoods, for their studios, for their projects. Here's a tweet that put it pretty aptly. I couldn't have said it better myself. Things that will no longer keep you safe in this industry. A good game, a profitable game, a viral game, a big publisher, a small publisher, a big team, a small team, a rich parent company, an ethical parent company, experience, long hours and sacrifice. Nothing guarantees that your studio will stay afloat no matter how good the conditions, unless you're pulling in Call of Duty numbers, GTA numbers, whatever, the big bucks, the Fortnite numbers. The amount of community goodwill that Microsoft and Xbox have lost with the announcement of these studio shutdowns feels pretty devastating. The trust surrounding the Xbox brand has completely nosedived. And then beyond that, you've got the loss of faith in Phil Spencer's leadership. For a while, he was seen as the beacon of hope that Xbox needed, especially after the terrible leadership of Don Matrick. But we're at a point now where no matter what Phil Spencer's intentions might be, he's just not getting a pass anymore. There's just straight up articles declaring that it's time to stop giving Xbox boss Phil Spencer a pass, which at this point, honestly, I just have to agree with. He said a lot of things that we want to hear, but he's just not delivered on results. Like when I really look back at Phil Spencer's current legacy, it's a lot of good intentions that ultimately never get fulfilled. As Nick Calandra puts it here, his legacy is shaping up to be a big spender and a silver tongue who just has not delivered results. Now, you want to know who came in Phil Spencer's defense? Former Blizzard president Mike Ybarra, who posted the most tone-deaf fucking tweet I've seen in a long time, trying to get people to empathize with how Phil Spencer is feeling, that, this is tough for him, making that more of a priority than the people who are losing their livelihoods, who are watching their studios, their projects, their future prospects, their family crumble right before their eyes. Mike Ybarra tweeted, "I see a lot of shots at Phil over today's Xbox announcements. I get it, but knowing him as a human, I know this hurts him as much as anyone else. Boo-hoo for the guy who is still the head of Xbox, raking in millions as an executive who is not losing his livelihood, who is gonna be fine, unlike the hundreds of developers who have to wake up realizing that so much of their investment in the studio, in the projects that they've been working on, are going to go to waste, and that they have to find new homes. They have to rearrange their lives. Like, I'm not saying that Phil Spencer is maniacally laughing at this situation. I'm sure that it's kind of rough for him too, as the leader of Xbox or whatever. But right now is not the time to try to garner sympathy for the multi-million-dollar executive. He continues, "I can't speak for all of the leadership there, but I do know him, and I do know what he's likely going through. I'm not trying to defend the decisions. I think we all get ourselves into situations that are tough and unexpected. It's part of the job, as is the accountability for the outcomes." What accountability? Where are we seeing the likes of Phil Spencer and the leadership team at Xbox and Microsoft being held responsible for this? Where is their punishment? Where is their penance? He then says, but he's a good human and he cares deeply for the creative process and developers. I'm not saying Phil Spencer doesn't care. I'm saying that how Phil Spencer feels right now is kind of the lowest in the list of priorities in this situation. Mike then says, "That's my first-hand experience in working closely with him for 8+ years and knowing him for 24+. I 100% understand the anger and confusion, and I feel deeply sorry for those teams impacted today and over the last few months. I didn't agree with every decision he made at Xbox, and I think that was pretty clear, but I do believe in his product leadership, and I know how hard these decisions can be. Xbox could have a very bright future. I hope they're able to realize it, and all of the teams have an incredible experience together. It's certainly a tough time that needs great clarity into what the plan ahead is and how gamers everywhere can be excited for it." Just what kind of freaking statement is this? There's one response from Alana Pierce, who is a developer at Santa Monica Studios, who put it perfectly. "Mike, I have a lot of fondness for Phil and don't doubt he's incredibly bummed about this, but CEOs can handle some shots amidst people having their lives destroyed. Your sympathetic post should solely be directed at those who've lost their jobs, not at the executives who'll be just fine, even if their feelings got hurt a little bit, or even if they're being shot at with some harsh Twitter comments." And this is all the more indefensible when you look at Microsoft's recent quarterly results. Late last month, on April 25th, 2024, it was reported that Microsoft beat expectations as quarterly profits rose 20% to nearly $22 billion. This is a $1 trillion company. No, a $3 trillion company in valuation, who profited greatly this past quarter. Trillions. Like, that is a figure that is incomprehensible. Nobody can say that Microsoft didn't have the capability to keep the lights on for these now shuttered studios. The fucking petty greed that a $3 trillion company needs to have to shut down studios that were delivering results, and if they weren't, it's because of dumb corporate mandates. It is unconscionable, and no amount of corporate speak about investments and prioritization and reorganization and yada 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 can excuse this. There's nothing that Microsoft, that Xbox, that Phil Spencer, that anyone can say to justify or to excuse this in any way, shape, or form, especially when Xbox insisted that they're the good guys in this, that these acquisitions would be beneficial for all of these studios, for the developers, for the consumers, yada, 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 only to now discover that we should be afraid for the Microsoft studios now, the ones that they've spent billions of dollars on. If they don't get a certain return in investment, they could be gone. No matter what quality they produce, it doesn't seem like they understand the idea of long-term nurturing that has made Nintendo titles thrive, that has made PlayStation titles thrive. And to really put into perspective just how much these Shutter Studios got screwed over, somebody talked about the big payout that Bobby Kotick got on his way out, $375 million. That sum could pay for the estimated salaries of both Arcane Austin and Tango Gameworks employees combined for the next 17 and a half years. This is just such a messed up and broken system. I'd like to next show you a series of tweets by Dinga Bakaba, who is the studio / co-creative director at Arcane Lyon. He just straight up has had enough and doesn't seem to care about speaking out, saying this is absolutely terrible. Permission to be human. To any executive reading this, friendly reminder that video games are an entertainment / cultural industry, and your business as a corporation is to take care of your artists / entertainers and help them create value for you. Don't throw us into gold fever gambits. Don't use us as strawmen for miscalculations / blind spots on the part of leadership who are not taking accountability. Don't make our work environment Darwinist jungles. You say we make you proud when we make a good game. Make us proud when times are tough. We know you can. We've seen it before. And the thing with Microsoft is that times aren't even tough for them. Again, a $3 trillion company whose recent quarterly profits exceeded expectations. He continues, for now, great teams are sunsetting before our eyes again, and it's a fucking gut stab. Lyon is safe, but please be tactful and discerning about all this, and respect affected folks' voice and leave it room to be heard. It's their story to tell, their feelings to express. Outside of those affected, we've got studios who have worked with Microsoft closely, but were not bought out by them, like Moon Studios, the developer behind Ori and the Blind Forest, Ori and the Will of the Wisps, and most recently, No Rest for the Wicked. The CEO, the creative director at Moon Game Studios, just tweeted very frankly to everyone who's been pestering me for years about why we didn't allow Moon Studios to get acquired by a big publisher. That's why. I've lived through the 90s and saw what happened when smaller studios got acquired by EA. And I mean, all this comes in right after Take-Two Interactive shut down 2 game studios who made some of the best games that have come out recently. London-based Roll7, developer of the action game Rollerdrome, a game that is freaking awesome. And then Seattle-based Intercept Games, maker of the space flight simulation game Kerbal Space Program 2. This also hurt. That brings the total number of layoffs in 2024 to almost 10,000, which already puts us pretty close to 2023's total of 10,500 employees who were laid off throughout the entire year. We're pretty much there, and it's not even halfway through 2024. I don't know how the games industry can remain sustainable like this. I don't know how Xbox expects to be a brand that people look up to and trust after this fiasco. I don't know how Microsoft expects to garner any semblance of goodwill if they want to attempt another acquisition. Now, people are just worried about the studios that Microsoft owns. And that's all I got to say, ladies and gentlemen. I'm curious to see if Xbox leadership will put out a statement addressing all of the backlash, if Phil Spencer himself will kind of, say something about this and explain what the hell happened and just sort of explain himself and all of the broken promises surrounding these studios that they said they would support, they would not shut down, that they're there to nurture for the long term. Let me know in the comments below what your thoughts and opinions are on all of this, and to be further updated on all things gaming news, reviews, and discussions, stay tuned right here on Young Yeah. I'll see you guys next time. Young out.